Welcome to the second installment in my knots series, and just a quick tip before we get started. If you are trying to learn knots, it can be very handy to have two different colored pieces of line. And if you don't have that, at least put different colors of tape on each end, just so you can keep track of them while you're learning the knots. I figured I'd get this series started by going over one of the most common knots, the square knot, also known as the reef knot. Most people will know this as right over left, left over right, which is exactly how you tie it. If you get that wrong and don't alternate the sides, you'll end up with what's called a granny knot, which is prone to slip under heavy loads and is much more likely to jam than your standard reef knot. Another way to think about tying this knot, which is often the way that I use, is once you make your first pass, check and see which one is on top and which one is on bottom. For the second pass, just keep it that way. Keep the one that's on top and the bottom one on bottom. Make your pass and pull. Either way, you should get two bites that are grabbing onto each other with the working end on the same side of the knot. The reef knot falls into the category of binding knots, which are knots that can tie things together. It works best if you have two lines that are of similar size. Pro tip, if your shoelaces come untied a lot, go ahead and pull the loops all the way through and see if you end up with a square knot or a granny knot. Square knots stay a lot better. The reef knot should not be used as a bend, because if you pull one of the ends away or perpendicular from the knot, the entire knot will collapse. Sailors actually took advantage of this property because they could reef their sails, which is actually where the term comes from, and then with one hand pull sideways on a part of the knot and let the weight of the sail untie the knot. Clifford Ashley, the author of the Ashley Book of Knots, has claimed that improper use of the square or reef knot has led to more accidents and deaths than any other knot, than all other knots combined, really. On a lighter note, there is a knot that falls into the same family as a square knot called a thief's knot. It can't be tied the normal way, and more importantly, it can't be tied on accident. Instead of the standard right over left, left over right, you actually have to form a bite and thread the working end of the other end through in a specific way to get something that looks like a square knot, but isn't a square knot. In this case, instead of having the ends on the same side of the knot, the ends are on opposite sides of the knot. It doesn't actually work as a knot because if you pull on the standing ends, it just collapses and slips. But it was used as a kind of privacy invasion detection device. If you tie this knot around something that you want to keep private and then someone unties it to go through your stuff that you didn't want them to go through, they'll most likely tie a reef knot or a granny knot, which is something that is very obviously different than a thief knot if you're looking for it. Then you would end up knowing if somebody got into your stuff when you came back. This knot is so common because it's used for so many different things, and it's actually pretty good at what they're used for. As long as they're used properly, it's a pretty safe knot, and it's one that's really easy to use, learn, and adapt to new situations. If you liked this video or found it helpful, go ahead and leave a like or leave a comment, and if you like the rest of the stuff I do, go ahead and subscribe. See you next time.